Hello, everybody. My name is Cal Duncan, and I was a very good and close friend of Jay's. Unfortunately, I cannot be with everybody there today, including Jay's family. The reason being, I'm 3 weeks out of my wedding here in Las Vegas, and I'm in the middle of processing some immigration paperwork, and I cannot leave the country. However, I wanted to do something that I could say to everybody and give them a little bit of stuff that Jay and I did together that'll bring a smile to everybody's face. I certainly want to thank Carson for letting me do this. And, we talked about me writing a speech or writing something that Carson could read. And every time I put my pen to paper, it was tough, and I'd get a couple paragraphs, and I'd drop the pen and get emotional because it's not often I've done this, and certainly under the circumstances, it's something you don't plan on doing. But certainly for Jay, who made life fun for me for 22 years that I've known Jay, I was introduced to him by a mutual friend named Chris Hunt. We were all in the car business together. I was working for the Auto Trader magazine at the time I met Jay, who was a fleet and lease manager at Port Chevols in Port Coquitlam. Once we were introduced to each other, Jay and I hit it off. It was, I think, the common ground. The reason why we got along was probably sports, but the other reason why we got along so well is I worked 2 days a week, and so did Jay. And Jay's favorite line when he'd look at me, he goes, "Cal, we work smart, not hard." And we'd laugh, and we really hit it off, and we took a lot of trips together. Jay, as you know, was one of the most positive guys you'll ever meet, who always he was known for having that loud, infectious laugh. And just a week before his passing, I have to give Carson a lot of credit. He was able to prop his dad up in the hospital bed and do a FaceTime with me with his dad, who basically, it was very tough because I knew that was probably the last time I would speak to Jay. So we hooked up the FaceTime. We had Jay propped up in bed. We had some nurses looking after him because he had trouble speaking as far as his lips would dry out, so they would ice his lips as he was talking to me. And the funny thing is what Jay had said, and I've got a bad memory, and Jay's got a great memory. And he said, "God damn it, Duncan," he goes, if I would never have guessed this, but it's kind of fitting. You're in Las Vegas, and you're getting married to some local person down there," and he goes, and he just started laughing, and he started naming a few things and a few frequent watering holes that we go drink at in Las Vegas here. And I just laughed at him, and I said, "I don't know how you remember these things, Jay, but that conversation was very fitting in the sense that we had a lot of really, really good times here in Las Vegas together. Jay loved to come down here, and it's funny, I'm living on a 10-acre horse ranch now. Jay grew up on our ranch or a farm, so we've done the reversals, and we had a good chuckle about that. And like I said, he said, "I can't believe it, but I in the back of my mind, Duncan, I knew you'd end up in Las Vegas." Well, I'm basically 3 weeks away from getting married here, and like I said, I did that FaceTiming with Jay about a week before his passing, and it's something I'll never forget. And like I said, I want to thank Carson for making that happen. It meant a lot to me. I've tried to write some stuff down to talk about with Jay. The best thing that comes to mind with Jay is when you first meet him and you get to know him, you love the guy. And for the people that didn't like Jay so much, it was only a matter of time if they got to know him better that they'd come around and they'd get to love him too. He was full of life, and he turned the most negative circumstances quickly into positive ones that would bring a smile to your face. And him and I, like I said, we had a similar work schedule, and we spent a ton of time together. in which he loved to go to Las Vegas, and he needed a wingman, and basically I was that wingman. I'm not even drinking here, actually, guys. I'm drinking water because I'm trying to lose weight for my wedding. I mentioned that, right? It's 3 weeks away, and Jay and I would bug each other about one thing, or more than one thing, but the most common thing Jay and I would bug each other about was our weight, because Jay liked to drink beer, and so did I, and yeah, kind of put a few lbs on when you're drinking those beers. So any chance we got to poke fun at each other, it was usually because of our weight or what we were wearing, and hence a colorful shirt tonight, because I knew if Jay had to comment on something, it would be on the shirt that I'm wearing. But here, this one's for you, brother. Like I said, we took many trips to Las Vegas together, and numerous trips, and nothing brought a smile more to Jay's face as when we landed in Las Vegas, and we had the limo driver waiting with a sign that said Jay Grant, and he goes, "Look at that, Cal. You know you've made it when they're picking you up in a limo with your name on the sign." And so we'd take the limo, and we'd check into a 5-star hotel, and we'd be in the VIP lounge, and Jay would love that. He introduced everybody to me in the VIP lounge and at the hotel, because they all knew him as I was his bodyguard. So he loved that, because he loved the attention of everybody thinking that he had a full-time bodyguard. And if one thing you know about Jay, he had this little thing that he'd always do when things were rolling along quite nicely. He'd have this little thing where he'd act like a fuddle-duddle farmer, like a dummy kind of farmer that, you know, didn't know anything about anything, and we would laugh it up, because it was just one of his shticks that he had, that he'd use quite often when we were partying hard, because he wanted people to think he was just a dumb guy with a big bodyguard. And so we rolled. That's how we rolled. It was from the time we got to the airport till we sat in VIP, or first class, I should say, on the flight, from the limo driver picking us up to the wee hours of the morning when we were crawling into bed at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and getting up and doing it all over again. It was just one of those things. And one story from Vegas that, and there was lots, trust me, and some I'll have to talk to you in private about, because that's just what we have to do here. But anyways, Jay was, we were walking through a casino one time, and it was the Hard Rock in Las Vegas, which is a pretty fun place to go gamble, and he was gambling, and I was wandering around with him, and we walked by, and I stopped, and I was looking in the store window, and they had these wicked, expensive, custom-made golf bags. And Jay walked over to me because he was wondering what I was looking at, and he goes, "What are you doing, Duncan?" I said, "Look at those bags hanging up on the rafters there. Aren't those sweet?" And Jay looked at me, and he said, "You know what? We win tonight, Cal. We're coming back, and we're getting those golf bags. Both of them." And so later that night, we were across town. We were playing at the Monte Carlo, and sure enough, Jay hit the big jackpot on a slot machine, and he didn't hesitate. He goes, "Cal," he goes, "let's get a cab." And I go, "Well, why are we leaving? You're doing so well." And he goes, "We're going back to the Hard Rock, and we're getting those golf bags." And we drive over the Hard Rock. We walked right to the store. We got the 2 golf bags. They were about $1,000 a piece. We put them in the cab and headed right back to the Monte Carlo. But that was the kind of guy Jay was. I mean, he talked about winning, and it was always we. It wasn't him or I. It was always when we were together. It was we. You know. So he sure made you feel good. He was probably one of the most generous people that you'll ever meet. I mean, he did things for people that you would never imagine. Very generous, and like I said, very positive influence on many, many people. And there was another time we were in Vegas, and we were out golfing, and we had a couple bevies like we always did. And he had a new video camera that he bought, and he was videotaping me unannounced. And I was climbing out of a sand trap, and I stumbled, and he was like howling, like I could hear him from all the way across the other side of the fairway, because he had it on video, and he was howling that I was stumbling out of a sand trap. And that was just non-stop humor, from playing golf to going to the casinos to going out for a nice dinner, because we got comped at most of the restaurants in Vegas because he was gambling, and they would try and sweeten the pot by getting him to come into the casinos by giving him some 5-star restaurants. And boy, in the years that we went to Vegas, we sure had a good time. I had a few friends at the time that I played football with in California that actually lived in Las Vegas, worked in the casinos, and they all met Jay from time to time, and they all said the same thing: wow, what a fun guy. My buddy that coached me in football also owns a bar in Reno. A couple, 2 or 3 trips to Reno, Jay went, and we'd meet up with my buddy that owned a sports bar there. Same thing, my buddy that owned the sports bar goes, "Cal, boy, your buddy's a lot of fun. Sure, a great guy." And just everybody liked hanging around Jay. It was always fun times when Jay was around, and he rubbed people. He just was infectious with that laugh, and loved talking sports. And I remember he had a new pool put in, and that's one of the reasons why I know that I've known Jay for over 20-something years, because when my daughter was first born, she had her first dip in Jay's pool, and now my daughter's almost 21, so I know exactly that I've known Jay for like 22 years or something like this. Another funny story that I had with Jay was we did a lot of golfing together, and we got up one morning and we went to Westwood Plateau, and we got there and we must have downed like 6-8 beers in the parking lot. We filled our power cart as much up with alcohol as we could, and we got on our way. By about the 4th hole, I was driving, Jay was in the passenger seat. I did a U-turn. For some reason they had the fairway cordoned off, so I did a U-turn at the tee box. I got the one tire stuck up on the curb, and instead of hitting the brake, I hit the gas, and down we went, about a 150-foot ravine. We hit about 10 stumps on the way down from trees, straight down. Rolled the cart. The cart must have rolled about 6 or 7 times. It looked like, by the time the dust settled, it looked like an airplane had crashed. The golf clubs were every which way. And my head was pinned against the ground, and Jay was on top of me, and the golf cart was on top of him. And when I heard the birds chirping, I couldn't believe. I was wondering if I was alive. Jay was pinned on top of me, and he said, "Cal, are you okay?" And I go, "Jay, yeah, why don't you get the F off of me now?" And he just started laughing. And eventually the guys came down and helped us drag the cart through the fairway into another fairway, and pulled the cart because the cart was heavily damaged. My knee was cut. I had blood coming down the back of my neck because I had hit one of the stumps with my head as we rolled, and I had cut my knee. So a couple holes later, we're on the course, and the course marshal came by just checking on how things are going. Well, the cart had trees and shrubs hanging off of it. Half the thing was caved in. We made it look respectable. My knee was bleeding. There was blood coming down my pants. They were busted open. I had blood coming down my neck. Jay was in a mess too, and Jay goes, "Fantastic! What a morning, Mr. Marshall. We're happy to be on the course. We're having a fantastic time." And it was one of those things where we just shook our head and we just looked at each other and started laughing. It was one thing after another. There's another time where Jay was going down to the Seattle car auction, because at the time, this is going back about 15, 18 years, that the American dollar is the way it is today, so they export a lot of Canadian cars through Seattle, and Jay and I would make a trip down there once a week. We'd make it a day-and-a-half trip because we go down the night before, and Jay would always go to the karaoke bar. We'd have a few drinks, and then on the way home the next day, we'd stop at the casino on the way home. But this one occasion, Jay said, "Cal, we're bringing along a guy that wants to come with us and learn the business a little bit about the auction." And he said that, I told him our routine. He's going to get his own room and stuff like that. So the day off, we're driving down there, and I was all excited because Jay says that this gentleman was very good at karaoke, and so I was kind of excited. I was in the front seat with Jay as we're driving down, and Jerry was in the back seat, and I said, Jerry, I hear you're a pretty good karaoke singer from what Jay has told me. And he goes, yeah, actually, I won a couple competitions. I'm actually pretty good, and I'm really looking forward to going tonight and singing. And I said, well, I don't sing, but Jay's pretty good, and the people know him at this little karaoke bar that we go to. It'll be packed. And so the night drove closer, and we went to the karaoke bar, and Jay was about fourth up, and the night was going good. Jay sang his favorite song, which was Mac the Knife, and nailed it. And after the song was over, the whole place was roaring and clapping, and they were happy because he did such a good job on the song. So Jay sat back down. We pounded some more beers, and by the near the end of the night, they finally called Jerry's name. And to digress a little bit, I said to Jerry, what song are you going to sing tonight? This was on the trip down to the bar, and Jerry said, I'm going to sing that Patsy Cline song, I Fall to Pieces. Well, shit, I'm thinking this guy must be really good, because that's a hard song to sing, right? Well, they called him up, and Jerry went up there, and it must have been about the worst rendition and that's ever been done of that song. He just blew it, and he came back to the table, and I said, man, you nailed it, Jerry. Man, was that good. And Jay was biting his tongue, and Jerry looked at us and goes, I don't think the speakers were set up right. I don't think it was my best performance. I go, no way, Jerry, you nailed it. And the crowd, I mean, there was only, when Jay finished his song, everybody was clapping. When Jerry finished his song, there might have been 2 or 3 people clapping just to make him feel good. But anyways, later that night, we get back to the hotel. Jerry's got his own room. It's Jay and I in the room in our own room, sharing a room. Well, when we turned out the lights after watching Sports Center on the TV, we turned out the lights, and I yelled out. I started singing I Fall to Pieces. Well, fucking Jay laughed so fucking hard. For about 20 minutes, we kept singing that song and laughing so freaking loud. Well, I guarantee you one thing. Jerry in the next room must have heard through the walls because it were so friggin' loud. It was his first and his last time ever taking a trip with me and Jay. So that was a real funny night that we had. Numerous golfing trips together, and I take credit, and I don't know if this is any good, but Jay wanted to quit smoking, so I said, well, why don't you take up some chewing tobacco, because that's not as bad. And for ever since then, and Bev, don't look at me wrong, but Cherry Skull, can you imagine how many empty cans of Cherry Skull you found when around the house? And that was good old Jay. Loved his Cherry Skull, like Carson would tell me the other day. He had his can right up until the very end there. So there was the Reno trips, there was the auction, there was tons of golfing. I mean, the one thing Jay had, like, he was so positive, and his laughter, and the parties. I mean, going and having trips with Jay was one thing, but I had to babysit the kids a couple times because Jay and Bev would go on these trips by themselves, and so I had to be not only the bodyguard, but I had to be called in to watch over the kids because, as the kids know, they had some humdinger parties. Alicia and Jaylyn and Carson, you well know the house was, boy, you guys sure, you partied hard. I mean, oh man. So there was those parties, and there was also Jay's parties and Bev's parties at the house. I'm telling you, if you wanted to do something, you just head over to the Grants. It was not boring. Jay made everybody feel welcome, invited everybody back to his house, no matter if you were at a hockey game, a baseball game, just getting back from a trip, ending work on a Friday. It was, come on over. And that was his attitude. He loved having people around him. He loved making people laugh. And like I said, his laugh was infectious. And it's just one of those things, that it's always the good guys they take from us. And we had this old saying in football, to describe someone. He's the kind of guy that you'd say you'd want in your own foxhole with you, the kind of guy that would jump out and take a bullet for you. Well, Jay was definitely the guy that you wanted in your foxhole with you. If anything, anybody had to take care of something or jump out of that foxhole and take a bullet, Jay would have done that in a heartbeat for you. Um, like I could go on and on. I'm looking at some of my notes here. I mean, it just they took the wrong guy away from us because Jay made everybody feel better. Um, I mean, man, like just I know that I have a fear of passing, and the thing I fear about the most is being forgotten about. And I can tell you here today that Jay will never be forgotten about. There's not a day goes by that I don't have a funny laugh or a funny story or a funny thought that, and it's about Jay. And so my fear is when I pass is being forgotten about. I'm here today to tell everybody in that room that Jay, and I'm talking to you too, Jay, you'll never be forgotten about, buddy, because there was too many funny stories and too many smiles that you put on people's faces. So I could go on and on. I'm just going to miss him every day. And I know Jay would be down there going, what kind of shirt is that you're wearing, Duncan? God, have you put on a weight? I thought you were getting married. Are you supposed to be losing weight? What are you doing? So this shirt was put on for you, Jay. And I'm drinking water because I'm actually going to lose some weight before my wedding. And it's funny, you know, Jay, when he heard that I was getting married, and I told him that, you know, when it was happening, this whole way through beating what he had was, he says, you know what, Duncan, I'm going to make it. You know, I'm up against it. The odds are against me, but Duncan, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be there. And he didn't quite make it, but I'll tell you what, I spoke to him a week before his passing on the FaceTime, and it was amazing. It was sad in the sense that that was the last time we're going to speak, but I'm here to tell you that he put a smile on my face. He made me laugh, and he had a great memory. And he said, Duncan, amazing that you're in Vegas. And it was very touching. And I want to thank the Grants for letting me speak today. I mean, I can go on and on. Just, he's one of those guys that we're really going to miss, and I'm going to miss, and he'll be in my thoughts every day. And I just want everybody to know that Jay was one of those guys that put a smile on everybody's face. Viva Las Vegas, my friend. Talk to you soon.